Okay, welcome to how to make your PowerPoint files compliant. Okay, we will talk about some of the myths and some of the things that people do, not realizing that like a screen reader couldn't read the document the way that it's loaded. So we'll talk about how to create them and how to save them. And some of the things that you can do if you have some documents that are like maybe all you have is a printed copy, you don't have the original file. So we'll show you ways to work around that to get help. Okay. So one of the big things about PDF files is you want to make sure that screen readers can read them. And usually when you're starting out to create the PDF, you're starting out with either a Word file or a PowerPoint or a scanned image or a scanned page. Scanned images are really a tough one to work with, but we will talk about some of the options to get around that as well. So the big thing is that if you are going to start off, especially with a Word file or a PowerPoint, you would want to make sure that you use the tips and tools to make sure that those files are ADA compliant before you create the PDF from them. Okay, so I've had other sessions that I've done on how to make a Word file and how to make a PowerPoint file compliant and some of the rules to follow. So I would recommend checking out some of those videos if that's what you're going to start with. Okay. Scanned images. If you're going to do a scanned image, that is not going to be compliant because a student that has a screen reader is not going to be able to read what that image is all about. So you would want to include a description as to what the image is on that page. Okay. So, kind of keep that in mind. Scan pages, if you are using just a basic scanner, they often will just scan in the whole page as one image. And again, a screen reader cannot read that. And I'll give you some tips to help you out with that. All right. Why do we need to use PDFs? Okay. Right now, with more and more of our students using mobile devices to read your materials, if they're using a phone, if they're using an iPad or, a notebook or something, a lot of times they don't have the software to look at a PowerPoint or to look at a Word file. So if you can export them as a PDF file, then they can actually view that document on basically any handheld device or any mobile device. So they're a little bit more mobile friendly. They're easier to print, easier to view. Adobe readers are free to students, so they can download that software for free to be able to look at a PDF if they don't already have it on their device. Screen readers have a free read out loud document reader in Adobe. So even if maybe you just are trying to work on something and you're make dinner or something like that, you can actually open a PDF file that's readable and have it read out loud to you. So it can have some advantages, not just to, a sight impaired person who might need to have it read to them. All right. And we recommend that any file that you're giving your students is in a PDF format so that they can look at it on a mobile device inside your courses. Okay. What makes an accessible PDF? Again, you would want to make sure that you run the accessibility checker on Word, PowerPoint, Excel files. Make sure that all your images have alt text on them. All your tables are set up properly. Again, we did a presentation on how to create an accessible table inside of a Word file. Making sure that you either have a description of what they would see in a chart or something to describe the image if it were an image that was scientific and you would need more of an explanation. You could create a paragraph that was underneath the image so that it could be read to them, explaining what the image is all about. Okay. You should be using the accessibility checkers, and I can show that to you right in this presentation because it's the same thing in Word as it is in PowerPoint. Okay. Add titles to properties. One of the things that we did find was that in when you convert a totally accessible Word file, There's one thing that if you don't do it, it will make it only like 98% accessible. And then it's putting in a title into the properties. And I can show you where to find that. You want to make sure that you use headings on everything. Headings are usually with screen readers. It can read off the headings to students and they can jump to that position in the document. So if a screen reader is reading it to them, they don't have to go back through and have the whole thing reread to them because they don't know where the information is that they're looking for. So if you use headings, it will let them jump to different spots inside the documents. Hyperlinks, any of your URLs, they should either be active and it should be the text describing them. So for an example, if you were sending students out to the Niagara County Community College website, that's the text that you should put into the document. Then select that text and make that the hyperlink. This way, it already is telling them where you're sending them if they click on that link. Okay. If you have to show it, if you're going to be giving something out in a printed format, you should be shortening the URL. Okay, so you should be using something like tinyURL to be able to do that. And that's another thing that I can show you as we go through. Okay. When you go to save a Word file, you want to make sure you do not use the option to save to print. Okay, so in fact, I can bring it up in here. If you go to File, there's an option to save it as Adobe, or you can use that one, or you can do the Save As option. What you don't want to do is you don't want to go to print and then tell it to send it to a Adobe PDF file. Okay, the reason why is sometimes you will lose the tags on them and the heading format. So you don't want to use that to save it. So you would actually go into Save As, give it your location, and then down here, you would tell it to save it as a PDF. And then you want to make sure that you check the options. And this is part of the PowerPoint, so you can look at that for the steps. You would want to make sure that this document structure with tags is turned on here. Okay, so normally once you turn it on, it's going to stay on for every file that you create and save, whether it be PowerPoint or Word. This setting will stay on for you, but you want to make sure that is on. And that's part of what will be lost if you just send it to the printer and tell it to print as a PDF. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get out of there. Okay, so this shows you the steps on what to do to be able to set it up when you print out a Word file. Okay, and there's the second step where you can check the document structure tags to make sure that they're there. And again, it's bringing it up that you do not want to do a file print and tell it to send it as PDF because you don't get the tags in there. Okay, and then when you go to save it, and this is where it makes it 100%. If you do everything else right and you save it and you forget to do this, it will make it about 98% ADA compliant for the PDF file. So when you go to save it, when you go to File, your default is automatically to be in information. What you want to look for is the title box, and you want to put a title in here. So you would, usually it would be the same file name or the title at the top of the document, something like that to define what it is. It just makes it easier for the students who are doing screen readers to have it read to them when it goes out and does a search. So it's always a good idea to put that title in there to make it 100% compliant. All right. All right, scanning pages to PDF, okay? One of the big things that you want to be careful of is a lot of scanners do not have the ability to scan in even a typed written page and actually create a typed written page from it. A lot of scanners will scan it in and just create a one-piece image of that text, and it puts that into like a Word document. And the problem is if you go to have a screen reader read it, it won't be, it will tell you it's unreadable. Okay, so we do have the option on our campus that we do have a scanner in Fracky that you can take a document that you have only in a hard copy and you can scan it in using the scanner in Fracky, and Maureen can help you with it. And it will create a Word document from it. So, you know, make sure that that's what you want to ask for when she scans it in. And then that way, sometimes depending on how bad the copy is, because a lot of times we have stuff that's very grainy, you might have to do some editing once the page has been scanned in. But she can email that file to you as a Word file. And then that way you can actually go in, make sure that that Word file is ADA compliant, and then save it as your PDF. Okay. So the big thing is be careful of those scan pages, because if it's just an image, I'll guarantee you it's not going to scan it in and allow it to be read by a screen reader. So if you're going to do something like that, you would have to scan the image in and then put a paragraph underneath it describing what that image means to make it accessible. Okay. Or add alt text to the image, which usually those types of images need a little bit more than just a one-line sentence describing what the image is. Okay. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you have paper copy only of a document and you don't have the file to work with, then you can bring it down to Frackia and have them work on it for you. Okay. Once you've created a PDF file, you can open it up in Adobe, and there's an option under View to read out loud. And you want to double check this. If you check this and it gives you a message that it's unreadable, that means the document that you've created cannot be read by any screen readers. Okay, so if Adobe can't read it, the screen readers are not going to be able to read it as well. Okay, so it's always a good idea to go out and double check this and see, if the screen reader or the read out loud option is available in the Adobe Reader. Okay. Now, one of the big things is being able to go out and run the accessibility checker. Now, I know that there's some issues with this, so this will come up with it, but whether in Word or PowerPoint, if you go to File, and if you have an older version, it might have an option in here to convert the file. So you might have to do that before you see the option for check for issues. So I would go into that, check for issues, and then check for accessibility. And that will bring up a screen on the right-hand side of your screen. And this isn't any different in Word as it is in PowerPoint. You would click on the actual problem. It's telling you what it is at the top. And then all these things here have that same problem. So there's mixing alt text on these. So if I go into this, it's telling me that this placeholder here needs to have alt text. So if I right click on that image, go to Format Picture, and then these buttons across the top, if I go to the third button over, which is Size and Properties, you can go to alt text. And I can go in and say, save as PDF, and then I can describe it in here. And then I would type out what the rest of the image actually shows. So you can see now that that image has been removed from the required list. So I could click on the next one, and it's already selecting the next image, and it's already in the alt text area. So I could go ahead and fill in that alt text. So, I would just keep going through until all these errors are gone. You must get rid of all these errors before the file will be ADA compliant. They do have warnings in here. You might not necessarily need to clear the warnings. It's a good idea to do it if you can. So if I go to the warning, it's jumping to this text and it's telling me that there is a problem with the hyperlink. So I probably don't have alt text set up on the hyperlinks in here. So to do that, I would right click on one of those hyperlinks, go to Format, or I'm sorry, you would go to Edit Hyperlink. And to add alt text is the screen tip option in the upper right-hand corner. So I would describe where this link is taking them in the screen tip. And once I did that for all of these, that would eliminate this warning in here. Okay. A very common thing in PowerPoint is the slide order for reading. So if I go into, let me see here, it's under Home and Arrange and Selection pane. That tells me the order on the right hand side that this is being read. it's actually reversed from what it actually reads. So Title 1 would be read first. So if I click on Title 1, it's telling me that's read first. Picture 2, so it would read whatever alt text I have on that. And then the text box here would be read last, which is how I would want the reading order. Sometimes you can't get the reading orders to eliminate in a PowerPoint, but this is just a tip. So it's not going to stop it from creating a ADA compliant PDF. Okay. Now remember, in PowerPoints, PDFs do not show the notes. So if I go in and I took this one here and I created this into a PDF file, this would not be saved with that PDF file. Okay, so this is more for what you would say if you were doing the presentation. So kind of keep that in mind. If this was something important, I would want to add it to the slide so it would actually show up in the PDF images of the slides when I create them. Okay. All right, so the big thing is going in and running the accessibility checker. Make sure you clear out especially all the errors that are occurring on the actual file. Try to eliminate the warnings if you can. Tips might be helpful, but you might not be able to eliminate all the tips. Once you clear it, you would want to go through File, Save As, tell it where you're going to save it, and you would change the file type to a PDF file. Check your options. Make sure that your options have the document structure tags for accessibility on, and then you would save it. Okay, and then forgot to check as I went through, if I go back to File, I check my information. I did have a title in there, so I was okay. If I realized that I forgot to put that title in there, I could add it, save the file, and then resave it as a PowerPoint. So that way I would make sure that it was ADA compliant. Okay, so the big thing now is just making sure that what you start with is ADA compliant before you create the PDF using that particular file. Okay, and for support and resources, we have our online learning homepage. We have our accessibility page, which has tons of help. And in fact, if I go into that, I'm gonna, let me bring that up. Okay, so on our blog, we have create accessible content tab. So when you go into that, there are a whole bunch of guides here. And we've created a list of things that you might want to work on to make your original files, even the PDFs, make them ADA compliant. Okay, so we have all these help screens. And then also in our presentation and handouts, in this tab here, we've done all of our recordings, all of our handouts from all the sessions that we've done. And I have a section in here for accessibility, and I will be adding the PDF one from today into here. And you can see past recordings on how to make PowerPoints, how to make Word, and how to make accessible content inside of Blackboard. Okay, so this is all available on our NCCConlinelearning.com website, and you can get any help for accessibility on that site. Okay, and this will take you to the site and to the accessibility page in there as well. We have also in here, we have a page underneath creating accessible content. There's a page for third-party accessibility statements. Anything that you use in your course, you should have an accessibility statement in your course for that particular thing. So if you use any of the Pearson MyLab products, there should be an accessibility statement inside your course. So we have links to all the accessibility statements for a lot of the different products that we know we are using on campus. And you can just select this and copy and paste it into your course so that you have the accessibility statement for the products that you use of third-party websites. Okay, so we've already done all the research for you, just have to copy and paste it in the course. Okay, so at this point, do either of you have questions?
think I'm okay for now.
Okay.
Me too.
Okay. Well, the big thing is the resources, and I'm going to wait until tomorrow to send all the ones out from this week and all the recordings and all the handouts. So let me go ahead. I'm going to stop the recording.